What's up guys, Atlas Plays here, and we're back with another video. Today I'm going to be actually doing something a little different that I haven't done on the channel before, and that's only because this really caught my attention and I wanted to talk about it. And I'm going to be doing a review of the first issue of the D-Spirits manga. So if you don't know, D-Spirits is a crowd-funded trading card game created by Sterling Cartoons that's reminiscent of things like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yokai Watch, and also a little bit of Pokemon, with both its world and cast of characters slash monsters. It has a great art style for its characters and cards, and an intuitive game design for the actual game itself. And recently, D-Spirits had launched their first series of card packs, along with the first issue of its official manga. This manga follows the story of the main advertised protagonist, Damon, as he tries to become the best D-Spirits fighter, I guess, in his world. This review will be talking about the points of the first issue that I liked and disliked, and also, warning for spoilers. So if you do not want to be spoiled, then click off this video, go buy the book for yourself, and then come back after you've read. But anyway, after further ado, let's get into this review. So, right off the back, I really love that as a black artist myself, this is a black created project. Sterling Cartoons is a black artist from Atlanta, or he resides in Atlanta. I really love the character designs that are present in this manga. They're very anime. Like, the art style is very anime, and that's not a bad thing at all. Like, black people love anime and have been drawing anime for decades. So, I mean, you can look as far back as Aaron Magruder and I forget the other artist's name, but just basically with the Boondocks and stuff like that. So obviously black people like anime, black people have been into the anime scene for a very long time, and black people are in official animes as well, from like Soul Eater to Naruto. So I really love the character designs. I think they're really well made, and it just the aesthetic of it all just looks really nice. It also has, like I said, great art style. If you look at the book itself, it is so glossy. It looks so good. As a physical product to own, I really like it. And it's a first edition comic, so I'm not sure if like all subsequent like reprints of the comic won't look like this, but for the first edition comic that I physically own myself, because I did go and buy it, I wanted to support, it looks really nice. Like, the layout is nice, the paneling of the comic itself is very nice, the back is very nice as well. It even has like a little blurb on the back talking about how D-Spirits is a virtual reality card game where dozens of monsters come to life to duke it out in battle. Players young and old compete in tournaments from city to city to determine who is D-Spirits master. So it's like Pokemon, kind of like that, but also like Yu-Gi-Oh, like I was saying before. And then we have our protagonist, Damon. There's nothing he loves more than D-Spirits battles, and he dreams of winning the big leads. So many of his loved ones are facing tough times, and he knows that winning the prize from the D-Spirits tournament can help them out of any jam. However, one rival stands in his way, Atlas. You say, will Damien be able to overcome Atlas to help his friends and family? So, what I don't want is to come across as too nitpicky, but if I'm going to review something, I have to be completely honest. So I am going to be a little bit harsh, just based on like some stuff that I would like to see improve as the series and the comic goes on. So, like I said, as a physical product, I think it looks great. I love that it comes with a promotional trading card of the actual game itself, one of the 5 monsters that are featured in the first issue of the comic, so I think that's pretty good. I'm not sure if every subsequent issue will come with its own bonus trading card, but just as like a promotional, I guess, prize for the first comic, I love that it comes with that. I love that it looks nice. It has a very good presented product. But anyway, let's talk about the story now. So, the story follows Damon as we're basically introduced to a bit of lore about where the D-Spirits come from. So I believe on like the very first couple of pages, you had a scientist who wanted to end world violence. So he took samples from animals, plants, items, and manipulated their genetic code to create ultimate life forms. So it's almost like he tried to create multiple Mewtwo's, like Mewtwo in Pokemon. Um, but their powers proved to be godlike and unwieldy. So the scientist supreme had no choice but to restrain his creations, sealing them into digital cards. Now, centuries later, replicas of those same cards can be used to play the biggest game in the world, and that's where D-Spirits come from. But then on the next page they say, at least that's what the story says anyway. So if we choose to believe this at face value, I think that's kind of a weak introduction to D-Spirits. Like, if I'm gonna compare this to like its predecessors a lot. So if we look at Yu-Gi-Oh, dual monsters within Yu-Gi-Oh's world has existed as long as Pegasus has, because remember, Pegasus is the one who created the entire card game for dual monsters. But if we look further in the past, with the first iteration of Yu-Gi-Oh, we know that dual monsters existed during Egyptian times and stuff, and that's where stuff like the Egyptian god cards came from, and their powers were sealed in these cards, and only like those who are chosen to be worthy of wielding them can actually use them. Otherwise, you can like be smited and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just with this first blurb about where they come from, you want to end world violence, but then you create like these weapons, because like it or not, if you're creating ultimate life forms and stuff, people are going to want to use them as weapons. And it's kind of funny that it had if you just take it at that value, then I guess you can pick that. But if it's supposed to be for kids or whatever, that's good enough reason for them. But I feel like with a brand new card game, most of your fan base is probably going to be coming from these other TCG areas like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff, so they'll be a little bit older. And I think that this is the writing for this is good, but it can definitely be improved, especially since I like the fact that it says at least that's what the story says. So maybe that's half the story. I'm hoping that this lore is expanded upon as the series goes on, because as of right now, if we were to take this at face value, I think that's a really weak premise. But moving on a little bit further into the plot, we have our first battle between Unnamed Girl, and I believe that first person she's going up against is Atlas himself, the antagonist that we'll see a little bit later. And we see that the creatures fight in more of a Pokemon style fashion versus a Yu-Gi-Oh card game style. And what I mean by this is that you have the card itself, but when you send the card and the creature out, then you are battling and giving direction for them to battle, versus you have, like, you know, with Yu-Gi-Oh, you have the card and you tell the card what to do, like basically like theatrically to fight, versus like a literal fight. Like Yugi's not summoning Dark Magician to duke it out with like Red Eyes Black Dragon and then expecting to win or whatever. Well, I'm pretty sure he would win because he has higher attack points. So the actual card game itself, I don't know how much it has to do with the actions within the manga, because it seems like things like life points and stuff don't really matter as much as like maybe elemental matchup and stuff like that. So it would be interesting to see where that goes from there. But I thought that was interesting that it's less of a Yu-Gi-Oh card game style within the manga and more of a Pokemon one. So harking back to what I was mentioning earlier about like Yokai Watch inspirations, like you have a bunch of zany creature designs and they can talk, unlike Pokemon which only say their names. These creatures can actually like speak in English. We don't know if that's visible to the players or just visible for the monsters, because you can also see that with Yu-Gi-Oh, like dual spirits and stuff like that. Dual spirits can communicate with each other, and only those who can see dual spirits can actually communicate with them themselves. And even those who don't speak English, like Karibo, they're wielders like Yugi and Jaden or Judai. They can understand them. So another interesting point I would like to see expanded upon. And then I really love its supporting cast of characters. So you have Damien, but then you also have his two friends, Chaz and Samantha. And we don't really get too much from them. They kind of are there just to support the main character, and I'm fine with that. But I would love to see them expanded upon more and just come into their own as characters, because we do get a lot from Damien. But even with a lot that we get from Damien, he still feels kind of one note. Um, and that's fine. This is like, I'm not expecting this to be like fully fleshed out and brand spanking amazing from its first issue. But that's why I'm pointing these things out, because I would like to see these things improve. So I love the design. I love Samantha's design. She has a very like 90s dancer. Like if you're familiar with like Sierra or Aaliyah, like that style of like fashion with like the crop top and the baggy pants and then the sneakers. And then Chaz is more of the traditional, I guess, not traditional, but like I don't want to say generic, but I guess I would, if I had to choose a word, it would be like more generic clothing style of like shirt and pants and sneakers, and it's fine. They don't have to look all anime-y to be good character designs. I think that how they look and how they dress fits their style of character really well, and I like that. So, moving on, this is where I feel like the story itself takes more of a downward spiral, and that's going to be the introduction of the antagonist, Atlas Yusei. I believe it's Yusei if I'm going off of like Japanese vowel pronunciation. And I say it takes a downward spiral because up until this point I was very like engaged with this. I was like, okay, there's a lot of promise here, like a lot of promise here. I love the world that it's setting up, and it feels very immersive. And then this character gets introduced, and all that built up immersion breaks down. So we have the introduction to the non-black protagonist, who I believe, if we're going off of name, Yusei is either Japanese, and if we go off appearance, then he is white. So Damien clearly is black, though. Damien and his friends are clearly designed to be black. So let's just assume for right now that Atlas is white. So he's using words like ghetto and ratchet when describing black characters. So we already have this introduction of like a caste system of like pretty much like anti-black racism. So I'm fine with that being an element in the story, but the way that D-Spirits presents this type of dialogue comes across as cringy. And I say it comes across as cringy because if you're gonna have these real world elements within a fantasy-like story, then you probably wouldn't have one-to-one word comparisons like ghetto and ratchet and stuff like that within your narrative. And an example I'm going to compare this to is in Teen Titans, when you kind of had like that racist word that's is it Blackfire? I don't think Blackfire. So it was some dude within like an alien dude that came to the Titans Tower, and the Titans were all really interested in him, but he called Starfire like a trough, something like that. And that was pretty much like a really bad word to call her because it meant that you are nothing and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, so we don't have to call Starfire nothing. We don't have to say that she's worthless or something like that. We have a word for it within that universe that matters to Starfire from where she comes from. And we're like, okay, so we know how, I mean, like, they don't ham-fist it to us, basically. They give us enough context for us to make our own conclusions and also tell us what it means. But it's not one-to-one the same as what we would hear in real life as just being worthless. We actually have a word for it. So, and that's what I have an issue with like the antagonist using words like ghetto and ratchet. Maybe there need to be substitutes for words like that. But as we go on through because this is all happening in like the second half of the comic. So the first half I really liked. The second half I did not like at all. Not really. Because it just felt like it kept breaking down the immersion and also ham-fisting all of these like real world elements into a fantasy like story which again, I'm not saying don't have them, I'm just saying make it fit your world. So this was very immersion breaking for me. And then you have this like lack of real response from the black characters to this like anti-black racism being directed towards them, because you're calling these black characters as a non-black person ghetto and ratchet. And if we're going off of linguistics and stuff, words have different um, words have different meanings depending on what group of people uses them, which is why non-black people don't say the N-word, which is why black people don't say certain words ourselves that other ethnicities have, which is why white people shouldn't use any of them. And then moving on from there, those are like my two issues with like the introduction of the antagonist. I did not like him. I mean, it's not even like I didn't like him because he's a bad guy. As a bad guy, I love villains, but he had a very weak introduction. He also just was kind of like your typical edgelord type dude, which even in the context of that, like like white edgelord boy, his dialogue could have been better or made to fit the actual world of these spirits than just what they gave him. So, and then we get a brief introduction into the devil character card that's in most of the promos that we don't really get to learn much about in this issue at all, but it's alluding to him being more plot relevant later on in the series. So I wanted to mention that here, but he's not really important to the first issue of this comic pretty much at all. He's just alluding to be of more importance later on. So next we're moving on to who I say is the worst character in the comic so far. I did not like this character at all, and I hope they get the Pokemon Lenora treatment of being completely revamped and upgraded and redesigned and just fixed. But this was the character Mama. So Mama is a restaurant owner of the restaurant Mama's, if you didn't know, and she's introduced to us with no real backstory, and she's kind of a mammy stereotype. And I don't say that because of like, oh, she has a headscarf, she's kind of big, stuff like that. That's a part of why, but it's the way that we are introduced to this character as a whole. So we don't have any real backstory for this character. We don't know anything about her. We don't even know her real name. We don't know if we're supposed to take Mama as her real... I mean, no one names their child Mama, so we don't know her real name. And like these side characters, she's just kind of treated as a side character and not really as a character we are supposed to explore. She feels more like an NPC of her own world. She has a very mammy stereotype, not just from her headscarf and stuff like that, but you also have the cooking stereotype, her being kind of a bigger woman, and her manner of speaking, because she has this kind of like southern drawl that I would compare to like how the Popeyes lady in the commercial speaks. Like, that's how she sounds. And like no normal person talks like this unless you are from a certain region. And that, with like the Popeyes lady, that's in Louisiana, right? But in the context of this story, we are not in Louisiana. We are not even in a fantasy equivalent where all the other characters are also talking like this. So just to have this one specific character talk like this, and we don't even have like a backstory for her, like maybe she came from somewhere else and set up shop here, and this is why this character talks like this. We just kind of are introduced to her as like this like stereotype Popeyes lady sounding voice with the cooking stereotype. And then also the other reason why I really don't like her is her manner of, not just the manner of speaking, but her attitude towards Samantha. So as I mentioned before, I think Samantha is my favorite character design-wise in this manga. She has a very, like I said, 90s dancer look of like the crop top with the top cleavage window, and then the very baggy pants, and then sneakers, and she has like long, beautiful hair and then earrings. But then when we were introduced to Mama, Mama is kind of like, she's a little sexist. Like, she's saying Samantha, oh, So, I'm actually going to read the quote. So, oh, and you brought Samantha as well. You really should cover up some, sweetie. You're a young lady after all. You girls sure like to show it all off nowadays, letting it all hang out. And then when I read that, I was just immediately rolled my eyes because I was just like, is this the character or is this the author? Like, I even mentioned this to my friend. Is this like the self-insert for how the author feels, or are we supposed to believe that this is, because it's not just this line that it's like a one-off line, okay, maybe mama's a little ignorant and just like stuck in her ways in old school and she doesn't really like how the girls dress these days. No, we're kind of like, this is thrown back at least 2 more times in this issue, and I don't appreciate it, I don't like it, and I don't like her, just because this seems to be like her whole thing. She has an issue with Samantha. And of course she's not going to outright say I have an issue with Samantha, but you have like an issue with how, I guess, people like Samantha, how they dress and stuff. Samantha doesn't like her, and she was very hesitant to come to that, come to Mama's, and it's apparent. Like, I can see why. She, like, Mama is a very annoying character, like very unlikable, at least to me. I don't like her. No one else around in that city speaks with the kind of accent that she does, and we also don't know anything about Mama's backstory. So, and then if we move on later on to her talking about how there's no people working here because she had to let them go, and that the battle dome that people have the D-Spirits battle with is making everything else around the place pricier, and less people, I guess, are coming to it, Mama's, because of that reason. I don't know. She says it like because of technology's advancement, that's why people are coming around to like these old school places less and less. I guess they want more of like a futuristic experience, but we're not seeing very futuristic looking locale in around the city. It looks like a very normal city with just like the hub being this dome. So even though Mama is saying these things, we aren't seeing it. So there's a lot of tell, don't show, which should be more show, don't tell. And then we go on, she goes on to say, oh, it's gentrification at its finest. And then that's another thing I have an issue with. Words like gentrification used. It's more immersion breaking. Yes, the problem that they are presenting is gentrification, but we should not have the word gentrification used. And either it is implied visually, and we can see that, and we don't really see that, like, at all. Like, even outside of Mama's restaurant, it doesn't look run down. It looks, I don't know if it's just them wanting to make a good looking background, but it doesn't look run down. It still looks pretty new, and the buildings around it, like on the sidewalk that they're running on, all look pretty not futuristic itself. Maybe it'll look different with color, but it just, I'm not seeing an issue of gentrification here. They all look pretty similar. Some are old-fashioned looking, some are like, you know, your plain buildings with like the glass panel windows and stuff like that. So it's immersion breaking for the fact that they're using words like gentrification when we don't have any visual cues of that getting up to Mama's building, but also words like gentrification should not be used. They should have came up with a equivalence for that for their story. Now, this is just my opinion, of course. They don't have to do this at all. I'm just saying, when you are inserting so much real life into your story, then that real life needs to be converted to feel authentic to that story's world. Because I'm not going to go into Pokemon, well, even though Pokemon dub does kind of do this, which makes it funny. Like, when you have things like onigiri rice balls and Brock calls them jelly donuts, that's kind of like a similar vibe of how I feel about some of the dialogue in this. It's like, okay, immersion, and then Brock says jelly donuts, and I'm like, huh, that's not a jelly donut. Like, obviously we're not going to think about that as kids, but then when you get older and you're able to see it, you realize, like, that's kind of an issue, but it's more funny, but also kind of cringe. And then after Mama tells us about her issue with like the ongoing gentrification of the city, we are now introduced to Damien's new goal of using the prize money, because I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but the prize money for winning the D Spirits tournament is like $1 million. Well, you a chance to win $1 million if you like. He has to win the tournament and then beat other people, and he wants to win $1 million to help save Mama's restaurant, and then that's a noble goal for the protagonist. Like, yeah, that's a nice little goal for the protagonist to have, to want to save his community and the people in his community, because he also wants to use this money to help his parents not move, because his parents are very busy and work a lot, so they're not home to spend time with him, and Damien feels bad about that. And the parents present him with an opportunity for them to move to another place where they could work less and spend time with him more. And he doesn't want that because he has friends here, so he wants to win the prize money to also help them. But if we are just going off of like real world equivalents, because so far that's what we have been doing. We have the dialogue like that, and then we also have a little bit of a locale like that, and also ideology like that, because you had Damien and Chaz praying over their food, like to the Judeo-Christian, I don't even know how you say that, the Judeo-Christian God, like that sort of thing. Like the way you would pray over your food at Thanksgiving, that's how they were literally praying. They were praying to God for their food, over their food, whatever. So we have a lot of real life elements, and if we take that real life element of a $1 million cash prize, that's not going to save a restaurant from being able to just indefinitely stay open. Like, maybe it could be a short term goal, and then maybe we'll have something more sustainable and long term, but that's not going to help Mama stay open if there's an ongoing gentrification problem, unless that money is to help her buy her building so that way she can't be bought out or something. But that's not told to us. We're presented with the idea that to help save Mama's building, that all Damien has to do is win this $1 million prize, and that'll fix his parents from having to move, which will not solve that issue, and prevent Mama's from closing, which will also not solve that issue, because these are systemic issues, and these systemic issues cannot be fixed with a mere $1 million prize payout. And it's hard to say where I'm supposed to separate the real life, like what's supposed to be real life and what's supposed to be the fantasy equivalent or whatever, because they put so much real life world building into this fantasy world. So overall, I liked this first issue of the manga, even with the issues that I did present. I think it has a really great presentation, a really great art style, and characters that I would like to see expanded upon, except Mama, because I don't like her. I'm a Mama hater. I don't like how she's presented. I think that Mama could also be improved as well, but just of how we are first presented to this character, I do not like her. But I do like this issue overall. I want to see this series go forward. I want to see it succeed, and I want to see it improve. Just writing issues could be fixed. I don't know if things could be retconned or whatever, but there needs to be more fantasy equivalents for these real life comparisons within the story. Like, we shouldn't have gentrification, ghetto, ratchet, stuff like that. And I don't even mind Mama picking on Samantha for like the style that she dresses in, but it's just that with her overall mammy character trope, I don't know, it just seems very ignorant, and I don't like that. But overall, I do like it. Like I said, I want to see it succeed. I want to actually buy the booster box of cards, because the physical cards themselves, they just look so goddamn beautiful, and I really like it. And it also tells you who illustrates it, because I think a lot of maybe not a lot, but a few D Spirits cards were actually designed by like a lot of like fake Pokemon artists, which I think is really cool. So yeah, if you guys want this, I am going to leave a link down below in the description for where you can go to the D Spirit store and you can buy both the cards and the first issue of the manga book. I believe this was like $25 plus shipping, so maybe like $30. I forget how much I paid for it. It didn't matter. I was gonna support a black owned business anyway, so I had no issue with the price itself, especially since I cannot wait to get the booster box, which is like $100. And that'll probably be my Christmas gift to myself, just to own the artwork. I want to own that artwork. I want to see this improve, and I also want to see this succeed. So if you like D-Spirits, or even if you are interested in it, I would say check it out. Like, if I were to give this comic book a rating, I would say it's a solid 3 out of 5. It's very average, but good average. Good average in the sense that it has tons of room to improve, and just some good feedback and some good criticism can help its story improve in terms of its writing, help some of the characters not feel so one note, and I don't know, just moving forward, I would like to see where the story goes as well, because so far we only really have like the D-Spirits as a card game, so now we're introduced to D-Spirits as like a whole world. So it's going to be interesting seeing where this goes from here. But if you like this video, you can go ahead and leave a comment down below. Tell me if you've read D-Spirits, or if you are interested in reading D-Spirits. What did you like about this, and what did you dislike? If you plan on picking up the book yourself, or any of the cards, they have individual card packs on there too. Like I said, I'll leave a link down below. And if you want more coverage of D-Spirits, which I'm probably going to do anyway, let me know that as well. And I will see you guys in the next one.